Good morning, everybody. This is your lecture for Chapter 2, Lesson 1. I just want you guys to know I have kind of switched things up. You now have Chapter 2 underneath your New Mexico history book chapters. You will find the online book here. I'm going to put the notes in a separate tab. So here are your Chapter 2 notes for today. When you do test corrections, your Chapter 1 notes are there. So this way I can just keep them all in one spot. So let's open Chapter 2 and see what we're going to learn about. We're going to learn about the first people. So our essential question is, how did the prehistoric societies of early New Mexico shape our modern world? This is a photograph of Navajo natives passing through the Canyon de Chelly, which was taken by Edward S. Curtis in 1904. It's a beautiful picture. I wish you guys could see it in the book. It's just really stunning. So our key ideas are: archaeologists study prehistoric people by examining the things they left behind. The Paleo people were nomadic and hunted big game, and the archaic people were the earliest farmers in New Mexico. So, thousands of years ago, small bands or groups of people roamed the land in what is now New Mexico. So they were nomadic, and nomad means they moved from place to place. They followed the food wherever a herd of animals like mammoth or buffalo went. They followed that food. They didn't stay in one place. So scientists do not agree on when the first people came to North America or how they got here. However, most people agree that people were living in New Mexico in around 11,000 BC. Because the people who lived here did not leave any written records, they're called prehistoric. So without diaries, newspapers, pictures, letters, how do we even find out about them? Well, if you look at this picture here, these are archaeologists. They study the clues of history. So archaeology is the study of past people and cultures through a careful examination of artifacts. So over a long period of time, wind blows dirt over things people leave behind. So if you went outside and left, I don't know, a bowl in your backyard, over hundreds of years, that bowl is going to get covered in dirt and debris. And then an archaeologist would come around and say, hey, I would like to find out about this guy. And they would excavate and unearth in your backyard to learn about how you lived. That's what an archaeologist does. So, example of these man-made items include spear tips, pottery, jewelry, and baskets. So archaeologists look for the remains of homes and burial sites and garbage dumps to see how people lived. So since prehistoric people did not have a way to write down anything and keep records, archaeology is one of the ways we can learn about cultures. So European explorers were the first people to write down about the indigenous people they met. And we talked about indigenous peoples yesterday. And indigenous means native. They were native to that area. They were already there. So the first groups, prehistoric people, are divided into two groups: Paleo people and archaic people. So today we're going to talk about the Paleo people. Paleo means ancient. Vocabulary. So, historians aren't sure when the Paleo people first arrived to North America, but they believe it was the end of the Ice Age. The temperatures were much colder than they are now. Ocean waters were frozen, the sea level was lower, and we watched the video of them coming from Asia, and the ice melted, so they were able to come down into North America. So when the early peoples came to New Mexico, the land was much different. It was cold. The glaciers had started to melt. and when the ice melted, it created rivers and lakes. So much of New Mexico that is super dry now was covered in swamps and forests and grassy areas. Can you believe that? Artifacts such as stone tools and skeletons of large animals tell of the existence of the Paleo people. So because they constantly moved around, remember, Paleo people were nomadic. They moved with the food. So they weren't sure, archaeologists are not sure what their homes looked like, and they're unsure if they had a written language because they moved around. There isn't really a place to study and excavate. So the only knowledge and tradition that they have of the Paleo people is stories and traditions that were passed down from generation to generation. So the first evidence of the Paleo people in New Mexico was discovered in northeastern New Mexico by a man named George McJunkin. He was a former slave and a cowhand, and he discovered some really large bones on the ranch, but they also discovered a spearhead, and it's called the Folsom Point. So I'm going to show this to you. It's in your notes, chapter 2, First People Notes. This top picture here is the Folsom Point, and they would use bone or stones to chip away and make these pointy spearheads. So this was evidence that the early humans killed large animals for food. Archaeologists found them and they called them the Folsom Points. So the abundance of plants and animals was good for people because the more food you have, the more people you have. So the Paleo people traveled in small family groups, and when they killed an animal, they would set up a whole camp and they butchered the animal, and then they used every single piece of that animal. Not one part of it went to waste. They used the fur, they used the bones, they ate the meat, and everything. They used everything. So once that food was depleted, they packed up and they moved on to wherever there was more food. So the Clovis Point, 20 years after McJunkin discovered the Folsom Point, a Boy Scout named Ridgely Whiteman made a similar discovery near Clovis. But the bones that he found turned out to be that of a mammoth. I don't know if you guys have seen Ice Age, the big elephant, furry elephant guys. Those are mammoths. So that's a huge animal. And the spear points that he found were much larger than the Folsom Point. And it had a leaf-like shape with a long, slender point. So because these points were larger, it is believed by archaeologists that this group of natives, the Clovis people, were killing animals that were far larger than what the Folsom people were killing and able to kill for food. So the Clovis and the Folsom people are Paleo people. They're believed to be some of the earliest people that have lived in now what is New Mexico. The artifacts they left behind, they tell a story about the hunters who used rock or animal horns to chip away the edges of stone. The people tied these points to strong, thick sticks to make spears. And in addition to hunting animals, the Clovis and Folsom people probably gathered seeds, roots, and nuts, and other wild plants to eat. So here's a picture I put in your notes. So here's the Folsom Point. You can see it's smaller. And look at the Clovis Point. It is a lot larger than the Folsom Point. So the Folsom group, the nomadic group, probably were not able to kill as large of animals as the Clovis people. So archaeologists are not really sure where the Paleo people went. Many feel that they moved to where the food was, and many feel that there was a drought, there was no rain or water, and some feel that there was a combination of the two. So eventually, as time went by, the climate became warmer and drier, and plants and animals either adapted to the warmth or they just died off and became extinct. So make sure you guys are copying these notes down and studying them because they will be on a test. I'm here if you need me and if you have any questions.